This is the third in a series of short videos designed to teach you how to have mental and emotional fitness. In the previous videos, we stated that behavior of any kind starts and continues because it serves a purpose. People do something because they get something out of it. If they didn't, they'd stop. Another way to say basically the same thing is to say that behavior is always goal-orientated. People always have some goal in mind when they do what they do. This includes when they behave in unhealthy, self-defeating ways. In the first video, we've identified some things that we all would like in our lives. Ideally, all our energy and effort would go toward reaching these goals, but no one does that perfectly or all the time. People often have what Rudolf Dreikurs called mistaken goals. These mistaken goals get them off course. People get some short-term satisfaction or gratification from reaching their mistaken goals. However, in reaching their mistaken goals, they make it less likely they'll get what they really want in the long run. These are some of the mistaken goals people often have. To get the attention, acceptance, and approval of others, to prove to someone that they're in control and have the power instead of the other person, to get even with or get revenge for some real or imagined transgression, to avoid failing at something like they have in the past and avoid feeling the shame and guilt that can go with that, and finally to temporarily withdraw from or avoid unpleasantness in their life and get relief from the feelings that go with it. For example, when people argue and fight, they often have the mistaken goals of power and control or revenge. They say and do hurtful things to prove they're in control in some way or to get even with the other person. But in doing so, it just makes it harder to have the kind of relationship they really want with that person in the long run. Many of the unhealthy things people do have the mistaken goal of withdrawing from or avoiding some unpleasantness in their life and getting relief from the feelings they often go with it. As we noted in the first video, the reasons that a teen boy might start to smoke could be to connect with his friends, to prove a point with his parents, or to get even with them in some way. But the reason he'll probably continue to smoke is that it gives him relief from stress or calms him down when he gets angry. Many people use alcohol and drugs to withdraw from or avoid unpleasant events in their life and to get temporary relief from the feelings that go with them. But they risk becoming addicted and having all the health and other problems that go with that. Others use eating an abundance of their favorite foods as a way to elevate their mood. They often gain weight without realizing it, sometimes to the point that it becomes a chronic threat to their health and life. The young girl who stopped eating to lose weight might learn that not eating and exercising a lot gives her a false sense of control over life and gives her some relief from the anxiety she generates about her life events. This at a time when her life started to feel out of control in so many ways and she struggled so with anxiety. Some might be quick to have sex with someone in an attempt to get someone else's love and get relief from the loneliness they feel, only to end up with an unintended pregnancy, an STD, or to find out later that they were used for sex, and then end up feeling even lonelier than before and feeling guilty and ashamed on top of it all. There are some old sayings that summarize what often happens when people have mistaken goals. For example, it's often said that people win battles but lose the war, or that they cut off their nose to spite their face, or that they sometimes go from the frying pan into the fire. For example, by starting to smoke, a teen does prove his point. He showed his parents and other adults that he can do whatever he wants to, and that his parents and others can't stop him. And his parents do get upset because he smokes, just as he predicted or expected. He won the battle. However, years later, he has smoking-related health problems and struggles to quit. He lost the war. He ended up hurting himself much more in the long run than he did his parents. He went from what he thought was the frying pan of having controlling parents into the fire of a lifelong addiction to tobacco and the health problems that so often go with it. He just made his own life much worse in the end. Given this tendency to have mistaken goals, to win battles but lose wars, to cut off your nose to spite your face, to go from the frying pan into the fire, it's easy for people to get off course in their efforts to get what they really want in life. It's easy for people to lose sight of the prize. In science, it's often said that progress often doesn't occur until someone finally asks the right questions. So it is with everyday life. There are some simple and direct but important questions that people can and should regularly ask themselves and others. The first and simplest of all is, what do you really want? There's an old saying, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. Not being able to put what you really want into words often leads to what is known as encoding. When someone encodes, it means they disguise in some way what they really want, instead of coming right out and asking for it. Problem is that leaves it up to the other person as to how they want to decode what you're trying to tell them. This is a common source of confusion, conflict, and disenchantment in relationships. One or both persons is not being forthright about what they want, and the other person has to guess, and often guesses wrong. The second question it helps to ask is, does what you think, feel, say, and do get you what you really want? Or does it make it harder in some way? In other words, how's it working for you? How's it working for you to think, feel, say, and do what you do now? And if you keep thinking, feeling, saying, and doing what you always have and what you do now, will it be easier or harder to get what you really want in the future? The answers to all these questions are usually obvious. We just need to ask the right questions of ourselves and others we care about. And if the answer to the second question is no, what you're thinking, feeling, saying, and doing isn't getting you what you really want, and it's not working very well for you, and continuing to think, feel, say, and do what you do now will just make it harder to get what you want in the future, then it might help to ask what might be your mistaken goal in continuing to say and do things that aren't working. When people are in relationships where things aren't going as well as they'd like, there's another question it might help to ask. If someone else thinks, feels, says, and does what they do, are you likely to get what you really want from them or with them? The answers to such questions are usually obvious. They just need to be asked. Albert Einstein reportedly said, to continue to do the same things over and over again and expect different results is insane. In other words, if you keep thinking, feeling, saying, and doing what you always have, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. If you want things to turn out differently and better, you've got to think, feel, say, and do something different. But that's not always easy, even when you want to. And here's one simple reason why. Everything we think, feel, say, or do is a simple product of connection made between nerve cells in our brain. When we practice and rehearse thinking, feeling, saying, and doing things a certain way, we create well-worn pathways or ruts in our brains between those nerve cells. It's like what would happen if someone kept walking the same way across a field of grass. They'd wear down a path, and pretty soon an obvious rut would develop. Then they'd be more likely to take that path instead of going any other way in the future, especially if they were in a hurry to get across the field. These ruts that we create in our brains from sheer repetition and rehearsal make certain thoughts, feelings, and actions automatic. We are more likely to slip into our own ruts and start thinking, feeling, saying, and doing what we always have without realizing that we are, and even if doing so has turned out badly for us in the past. Because people have these cognitive, emotional, behavioral ruts, they have a tendency to recreate their past, often without being aware of the fact that they are. If these ruts lead to helpful and pleasant thoughts, feelings, and actions, that can be a good thing. However, if they lead to unhealthy, self-defeating thoughts, feelings, and actions, it can be a problem. These ruts can make changing the way we think, feel, say, and do things difficult, even if we realize that thinking, feeling, saying, or doing what we do now hurts us. That's part of why people struggle so much to quit smoking, drinking, using drugs, and eating poorly, or anything else that they do that's unhealthy and self-defeating. It's why they always seem to end up in the same place emotionally and behaviorally that they have in the past. There's another old saying, an overreaction is an age regression. It means that whenever someone does overreact emotionally, and perhaps behaviorally, it's often because something about the present-day situation reminds them of a past situation, a situation where they generated a dysfunctional amount of emotion. They quickly and automatically plug into some old cognitive, emotional, behavioral ruts that already exist, and they overreact because of it, emotionally and behaviorally. Everyone has these old cognitive, emotional, behavioral ruts, and it's part of being human to slip into them. It's important to learn to recognize how and why current situations might remind us of old ones, and what some of our old cognitive, emotional, behavioral ruts might be, and that current situations might cause us to automatically plug into those old ruts, and it's important to recognize when we do. The important point we made in earlier videos is that a large part of what gives purpose to unhealthy, self-defeating behavior, and that serves as a driving force behind any behavior intended to satisfy a mistaken goal, is that people generate what is called a dysfunctional amount of emotion. That's why learning to have truly effective emotional management is the first and most important life skill that people need to learn. There are 4 simple, easy-to-learn cognitive life skills that can help you develop truly effective emotional management. The first is to learn to have unconditional self-acceptance, or USA, and unconditional other acceptance, or UOA. The second is to develop what is called an internal locus of control. The third is to learn to recognize and correct irrational thinking in yourself and others. And the fourth and final skill is to develop a step-by-step approach to any potentially troublesome life event that allows you to get into the best possible cognitive and emotional place to make the best possible behavioral or lifestyle choice for yourself and others. The remaining videos will teach you how to develop these 4 cognitive life skills. Learning these skills is called the ABC system of cognitive, emotional, and behavioral, self-management, and self-improvement. Becoming proficient at these 4 skills is called having mental and emotional fitness. As always, remember that you can find most of what we talk about at www.itsjustanevent.com. Or you can read more about these skills in the book entitled It's Just an Event, It's Your Choice How You Want to Feel by Ray Mathis. That book is available at Amazon.com, at www.itsjustanevent.com, and at Publishamerica.com's online bookstore.